Let me know when
right.
you guys see it.
Yep, I see it. All right. So, Bismillah. So, today's presentation focuses on a recurring critique leveled against the Quran by Christian polemicists. The claimed historical inaccuracy regarding Maryam alayhi salam, the mother of Isa alayhi salam, whom the Quran refers to as the sister of Harun. This contention stems from the biblical account where the sister of Moses and Aaron is named Miriam, and their father is identified as Amram. Next slide, please. I think there's a little bit of delay, but I think it's fine. Okay. Both the Quranic and biblical verses in contention are displayed on screen for your guys' references. The Quranic verse being mentioned in chapter 19, verse 28, while the biblical verse is mentioned in Numbers chapter 26. I forget the exact verse, but I think it should be on the screen. Verse 59. There you go. Yeah. Next slide, please. Brother Ali, next slide. I think you're on slide 4. You skipped a slide, I think. Or you yeah, there you go. Presuppositions, perfect. First, let's illustrate the inherent fallacy of this argument, as it lacks internal consistency. Our Christian friends begin by assuming the Bible, a book riddled with errors, contradictions, and historical uncertainties, as a reliable source. However, then they abruptly do a paradigm shift, pointing to a supposed historical error in the Quran. The second fallacy lies in the Quran allegedly confusing timelines simply due to the name similarities. For instance, Maryam alayhi salam, the mother of Isa alayhi salam, is presumed to be the same as Miriam, the sister of Aaron and Moses in the Bible. Similarly, Imran, the father of Maryam alayhi salam, is equated with Amram, the father of Moses, Aaron, and Miriam in the Bible. A third fallacy involves the assumption that the absence of any mention of Mary having a sibling in the Bible automatically renders the Quran anti-historical when it refers to Mary having a brother. Fourthly, the poor understanding of the Arabic term ukht. There is an assumption that ukht, meaning sister, used in the verse exclusively denotes a blood relation and never signifies an honorary or metaphorical kinship in Semitic cultures. Based solely on these erroneous premises, one might question the necessity of even entertaining this argument. However, our approach tonight will be to engage with our Christian friends, generously conceding all the ground that they need or want. Yet, even with this concession, we will dismantle the core of this argument, thereby putting it to rest definitively, inshallah, God willing. Next slide, please. Brother Ali? Okay, perfect, yeah. So now there is a hadith addressing a similar issue that was raised up by the Christians at the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, had responded to them by saying that the people of the past, which is a tradition that still continues till this day, by the way, used to honor the prophets or pious people of that time by naming their children by the same names. This indicates that he was perhaps referring to Mary, peace be upon him, peace be upon her, having a brother named Harun. However, one could ask if there's an additional significance of mentioning the name Harun in the Quran, perhaps in an honorary sense. And the answer is yes, which is exactly what we will explore in the next few slides. And lastly, we will address whether or not there's a usage of any similar epithetic or honorary titles in the Bible. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, as you guys can see on screen, the hadith that I discussed in the previous slide, where Christians of Najran questioned a companion of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The companion then approached the Prophet and inquired about this issue. As mentioned earlier, the explanation provided by the Prophet, peace be upon him, was that they named their children after the pious people or prophets of the past. Ibn Kathir clarifies this by stating that it's a form of referring to someone by the name of their respected tribes, rather than implying literal kingship. Next slide, please. Furthermore, we will examine this argument for a linguistic point of view as well. It's crucial to note that both in Arabic and Hebrew, the words for brother and sister can encompass literal, spiritual, or metaphorical kinship. This includes relationships such as being from the same tribe, sharing a common heritage, or being fellow countrymen. Let's delve deeper into this aspect in the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. One important aspect to grasp about the Arabic rule concerning the word akh or ukht is that the distinction between its literal and metaphorical usage often relies on whether or not it is made plural. If it remains singular, the difference is indistinguishable. As you can observe on your screens, there are two options to pluralize the word akh in Arabic. When referring to blood brothers, it becomes ikhwa, whereas when referring to spiritual or metaphorical brothers, it becomes ikhwan. Now, concerning the Arabic word for sister, ukht, whether you're addressing someone as your spiritual sister or your biological sister, even if pluralized, the distinction remains unclear because both are referred to as akhawat. In the Qur'an, ikhwa predominantly denotes blood brothers, except for one instance where it's used to establish a strong bond among the believers. Apart from that instance, ikhwan is consistently employed to denote spiritual brotherhood or those from the same nation. Now, transitioning from Arabic to Hebrew, do we encounter a similar rule in Hebrew? Let's explore. Next slide, please. So, according to the Strong's Concordance that you guys can see on your screens, we observed that the word akh in Hebrew, meaning brother, can encompass various meanings, including blood brother, nephew, relative, companion, kinsman, or fellow countryman, among others. Very similar to how we define the rules in Arabic, we see the same thing happening in Hebrew. Next slide, please. Likewise, upon examining the word akhot in Hebrew, which translates to sister, the lexicon indicates its diverse usage, including referring to a blood sister with the same parents, a half-sister, a relative, or denoting a metaphorical relationship between different tribes. Next slide, please. Now that we have established the words brother and sister can be employed in both metaphorical and literal sense in both Arabic and Hebrew, let's delve into some specific examples beginning with the Qur'an. We see that in chapter 7, verse 38, where the word sister is used in a metaphorical sense in reference to a nation preceding it when they're put in hellfire. Then we see another example where the word brother is used in a metaphorical sense to being the brother of devils in chapter 17, verse 26. Obviously, Quran is not referring to literal kingship between us and the devils, or even in case of jinns. And lastly, chapter 7, verse 65, where Prophet Hud alayhi salam is referred to as the brother of nation Ad, the nation of Ad, once again in a metaphorical sense and not in a literal sense. He was not a literal brother to the entire nation. Obviously, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to Hud alayhi salam as a metaphorical brother of the entire nation. Next slide, please. Now let's take a look at some similar examples in the Bible. Mark 3:35, Jesus says that whomever does God's will is his brother and sister and mother. Is Jesus referring to them as becoming literal siblings or mother? Of course not. We all know what he means, and he means it in a metaphorical sense. Then we see in Luke 1:5 where his wife Elizabeth is being referred to by his, Zechariah, Prophet Zechariah, sorry, is being referred to as the daughter of Aaron, the same Aaron that is in contention in this entire presentation, by the way. Elizabeth is referred to as the daughters of Aaron. Does that mean that Elizabeth is referred to as a literal daughter of Aaron from the time of Moses, peace be upon him? Should we say that the Bible is getting the timelines mixed up? And finally, we have Matthew 9:27, where Jesus is being referred to as the son of David. Now, shall we say the Bible has an error here? Because the same Bible tells us that Jesus did not have a biological father, and his adoptive father's name was Joseph. And even Jesus being from the lineage of David wouldn't make sense even in the tribal sense, as according to the Jewish custom, the lineage is linked from the father's side, and Jesus had no father. This is among many one of the reasons why the Jews also reject Jesus to be the Messiah, by the way. But that's a whole different topic for another day. Next slide, please. Let's see some examples to expose the cognitive dissonance of our Christian friends and see if they apply the same standards to their Bible as they do to the Qur'an when it comes to this particular argument. So we're commonly told by our Christian friends whenever we point out the discrepancies in the lineage mentioned in Matthew and Luke that Matthew quotes a lineage through Joseph, while Luke is quoting the lineage from Mary's side, even though the text itself does not say anything like that. But no problem. Let's analyze Luke 37, and we'll give to our Christian friends this particular ground also. And in Luke 3:27, where Jesus's lineage has a character called Zerubbabel, who has a father called Salatiel. On the other hand, Matthew has someone by the same name, Zerubbabel, who has a father called Shealtiel. Now, our contention is this. Since we have conceded that Luke and Matthew's genealogies are from different sides, then are they both mixing up Salatiel and Shealtiel, two names which suspiciously sound very similar to each other, just as Imran and Amram, or Maryam and Miriam, sound similar? Next slide, please. Now, let's take another example from within the same genealogy within Luke chapter 3. As you guys can see on your screen, both these examples have taken the same genealogy by Luke, that is Jesus's on Jesus' mother's side. Now, there's a character called Semain, son of Josek, son of Joda, son of Jonam, being mentioned there. Then we have another character with a very similar name, Simeon, son of Judah, son of Joseph, son of Jonan. As we can see, these are very similar names, but with different chronological order within the same within different timelines. Applying the same standard as the polemicists apply to the Qur'an, shall we say Luke is recycling the same names in Jesus' genealogy? Or did he get the timelines and lineages mixed up? Next slide, please. And a final example from Matthew chapter 1, verse 16, where Jesus' adoptive father, Joseph, has two sons, making them Jesus' maternal half-brothers, whose names are Semai and Judas. If we compare these names to Genesis chapter 35, where Prophet Joseph is said to have two brothers with similar sounding names, Simeon and Judah, can we say that Matthew confused Joseph the carpenter with Joseph the prophet? Or mistakenly identified Joseph's brother as his sons? Or applying a very similar criteria that our Christian friends apply to the Qur'an? Next slide, please. So, what have we concluded so far? One, if the Quran confused Maryam alayhi salam with the sister of Musa alayhi salam and Harun alayhi salam at the time of Pharaoh, there would be some sort of dialogue or interaction taking place between Mary, peace be upon her, Harun alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, or Pharaoh for that matter, as they are all quite prominent characters in the Quranic stories. And this is definitely not the case once we read the Quranic narrative of any of these stories. We never once find Maryam alayhi salam mentioned in the story of Musa alayhi salam or the Pharaoh. Why does the Quran not refer to Maryam alayhi salam as a sister of Musa alayhi salam, as he's a far more influential prophet than Harun alayhi salam in the Quran? And the name of Musa alayhi salam is mentioned all over the Quran. Number 3, the Quran goes out of its way not to mention the name of the sister or father of Moses, peace be upon him, to avoid confusion. Number 4, Mary's maternal cousin Elizabeth was from the tribe of Levites, which can be seen clearly being mentioned in Luke chapter 1, verse 5. So by that standard, by default, that would make Mary from the lineage of Levites on her mother's side, because obviously Elizabeth was her first cousin. Next slide, please. Now, Ukht-e-Haroon was just an honorary title for Maryam alayhi salam, as she was under the guardianship of Zikriya alayhi salam, according to the Quran. This, by the way, is not mentioned in the biblical narrative of Mary, peace be upon her. The people were basically reminding her of her kingship with the family of Zikriya alayhi salam in the Quranic story, who was a Levite priest from the descendancy of Harun alayhi salam. Number 6, many Christians have argued that Mary was not from the tribe of Levites, as a tribe is not identified from her. My apologies. As a tribe is identified from the father's side, according to the Jewish custom, as mentioned earlier, to which we all have to then ask, why don't they apply the same standard to Jesus, peace be upon him? Because he did not have a father, so he can't be from the lineage of David, which would mean Jesus can't be the true Messiah, and the Jews are correct to deny his messiahship. Another problem with this argument is that even though the tribe of Mary isn't mentioned in the Bible, and it is only an assumption that Luke talks about Mary's genealogy, even though the text does not claim anything like that. But as I said, we will concede that as well. And even then the argument falls apart, because we see in the Quran Jews refer to her as a sister of Harun, not the daughter of Harun, which means the Jews were aware that Mary was not from the tribe of Levites. And finally, I'll end the presentation by quoting a beautiful verse of the Quran from Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 120. That says, "And never will the Jews and Christians approve of you until you follow their religion. Say, indeed, the guidance of Allah is the only guidance. If you were to follow their desires after what has come to you of knowledge, you would have against Allah no protector or helper." So the Muslims are being referred to over here by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that will be it from my side. If Brother Ali, he wants to add something in there.